welcome to our final Real Talk program for the year 2021. Yeah, I can see and feel all the sighs out there. Wow, it has been a fantastic 2021, although we started only in August, but it has been fiery, it has been explosive, and extremely real here on Real Talk. Now, we started our very first Real Talk with the series entitled Bible Prophecy and Current Events, in which we addressed the pandemic of the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. And if you're following the news and following what is currently happening now, I'm sure you'll agree with me that that one is not done with yet. And you can watch out for that series as it continues in 2022. And we will be returning to Bible prophecies and current events in 2022. So you can look out for that one. Another one you can look out for in 2022 is one of our most popular Real Talk topics: married but in love with someone else, which was a part of the Happily Ever After Really series. We've received tremendous feedback from that topic, and at times it is very difficult to accept certain truths of life. The struggle is definitely real, having to live with the fact that yes, your spouse may not love you, but at least is committed to you. It's not easy to accept. So we'll be coming back in 2022 with part 2 of that one. We just like to appreciate everybody that has been giving us feedback here on Real Talk on the various programs that we've had, your topic suggestions, which we have taken into consideration, some which we've tried to implement in 2021, and many of which you will see in 2022. So today may be the last show, but it is certainly not the end of Real Talk. So keep an eye out for that one. Now today, we talk about a generation of absent parents. Yes, that's correct. I mean, those who are in the know, who are studying sociology, criminology, and all these various kinds of scientific studies say that the world is messed up because parenting has gone wrong. Oh, what happens if you had to grow up without one or both parents? Are they truly right? Can we attribute all of life's problems to parenting? Does it all go back to parenting? We'll be interrogating this one on Real Talk. I will ask Sam to bring our last guests online. Now, as always, you can get in touch with us. We would love to hear from you. We know that some of you are watching through YouTube, so drop us a comment. And those who are watching through Facebook, drop us a comment. We'll be able to collect all the comments and all your questions. We would also like to appreciate the anonymous questions that we've received regarding today's topic, which we will be addressing today on Real Talk. But perhaps during the show, you would like to get in touch with us, but anonymously. The number is appearing on screen. Sam is assisting us with that one. So you can get in touch with us and any of the producers behind the scenes, and we will be able to get your anonymous comments. But what is important right now is for you to like this page. Yes, like this page so that you can get all the future notifications from Amazing Grace. You can also join the Real Talk page. I will ask Lulu to post the link for that one. And so you can be a part of the Real Talk community. Also, call all your friends to come and watch this exciting discussion today on absent parents. Belinda, it is always a pleasure and wonderful to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you, Sonia?
Great. And you know, as they like to say in church, Belinda is not coming alone today. Belinda is here with someone. We welcome Tabo as well for the very first time to Real Talk. We're happy to have you guys joining us all the way from South Africa. And what's the weather like there?
Thanks for having us. The weather is cloudy as we speak, about to rain. It rains a lot in South Africa this day. I don't know if it's a blessing or not.
I would say it's a blessing. We also just had a few showers just now. Sure, it's going to be rainy as well. But also joining us for the first time on Real Talk and also from South Africa is Sibonile. Sibonile, thank you so much for coming on to Real Talk. We're happy to have you here. And how are you doing? How was the Sabbath? How is the Sabbath so far, rather?
Thank you, Sonia. The service has been wonderful. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Kuda, a man who needs no introduction, who is an introduction all on his own, one full
But
package.
of course.
Yes, of course, of course. How are you doing, Kuda? Good to have you back.
Glad to be back for the last Real Talk, Sonia. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's been real. It's been real. Want to just tell us a little bit about your Real Talk experience because you've been here a couple of times, eh?
Yes, I was a guest, but then I got many return tickets. So it's been lovely to be here. Many interesting topics, many great memories. So I'm hoping this becomes one of them.
Wonderful. Or maybe you were that guest that just wouldn't go away, but we are
Of
always
course,
happy.
waiting for you to serve the food.
Yeah, we're still boiling the water. You know, we can boil it
But of
forever
course,
because we're waiting for you to go.
we'll be here then.
Beautiful, wonderful. Let me just take some time to greet those who have dropped us a comment. It's a happy Sabbath to you, Maria. Maria says, imagine first new shot. Yes, we are hoping for the mercies of the Lord. We also would like to wish Precious a happy Sabbath, as well as Denford and Kitso, Joshua and Lulu, and many others that are tuning in right now. But without further ado, let's get into today's program. Tabo, may I ask you to just open in prayer, please?
Let us bow our heads for prayer. Our precious Lord and Heavenly Father, we are thankful this afternoon that you are holy and exalted above everything that we ever know. And Father, it is in this, in that breath that we have gathered here on this platform so that we can talk about pertinent things which affect our lives, which affect our communities, which affect our churches. And Father, help us through your guidance that we may be able to speak that which is important, that which is ennobling, that which will assist and help somebody out there. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. So let's start off by talking about this absent parents. Belinda, what is an absent mother or an absent father?
Okay, I think that my understanding of absence is twofold. There's the obvious, the parent is absent as in he is not there in the home. For example, in South Africa, 31% of Black children, for example, grow up without a biological father in the home. Okay, then there's the other insidious form of being absent, where the parent is present in the home, but he or she is financially, emotionally, spiritually, and especially morally absent. Okay, and I feel like those parents possibly have a far more toxic effect than those that are just physically not there. Okay, so I think it goes from one end to another, where the parent is just not there. You just don't know your parent. Like I grew up without my father, so he was just absent. And then there are those who are toxic, who are present, but your parent is morally bankrupt, for example. So he's absent in terms of being a moral campus. Children get their moral authority from their parents. So if your parent is morally bankrupt, then which means that they are technically absent in terms of your moral upbringing. So that's my understanding of absent parenthood.
So what you're saying is a parent can be physically there, but just not there in terms of the child.
Yes.
Okay. All right. But Tabo, would you say that such things as trying to achieve certain goals in life could also be responsible for this absent parenthood? One may not have time for their children because you think, in earnest, I would rather give them the best education, the best food, the best clothes, and that takes you away from them.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of misalignment out there in as far as I'm concerned about the presence of the parents, whether it's a father or a mother, because usually some of us we interpret that to say, I'm there, I'm around, I come, I work hard for these children. I leave at 5 o'clock. I come back at 7 o'clock in the evening, and I give them everything that they want. Okay, but usually you find that children not only need you to give them money or to um, give them resources, but they also need you to be there. They need you to be part of their lives. They need you to take walks with them. They need you to be part of their lives, attend their school concerts, be there when they play soccer or rugby or anything of that sort. I remember vividly, one of my experiences with my dad when I was small, which were one of the few experiences. On a Sabbath afternoon, he took me for a walk, and I come from rural areas, so he took me for a walk, and he was telling me the names of the plants out there. I don't remember any single plant, but I remember that experience, and I was very happy that we did that. So those things in life, they somehow affect you, uh, because, and as far as your outlook is concerned, you need not only a support from your friends or anything, even when you're grown up, but you need a support from your parents. You know that your parents have got your back. So it's important. And your question was saying, in terms of the outlook of life, does that affect you? Of course, it does. It does. You need to have your parents to be there in support, and for the children to know that our parents are here. In fact, it's even better if it's both of them, not just of one of them. It's even better because they get both perspectives, they get both experiences, they get to know how to think, what my mother thinks and what my mother thinks. So maybe let me keep it there. It's important for them to be there.
Okay, so although one may need both parents, is it still possible that a child could develop normally or well with just one parent, Abo?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt, it is possible. It
Yeah.
is possible. Okay, lovely. Now, Sponile, if children are known to copy what their parents do, can we also see the mistakes of their parents manifested in the children when they become adults?
I'll be careful to answer that. And also it
Okay.
depends. I think that parents have a very huge influence and probably the other base of what you will determine as your moral base, as your moral radar, or whatever it is that you call your compass in finding your way in life. But it's not always the case that children follow the footsteps of their parents or will generally fall into the tendencies of their parents. Reason being is that when you grow older, you also realize the mistakes of the parents, or it is a personality is formulated, and what it is that you like, you will then follow that. So it's not always the case that you will fall into the same mistake, but it is highly likely that you are going to follow your parents' footsteps because they have become your example. They have determined a large part of your compass has been determined by the way they view life. The only difference is that there are also other external influences. Your child isn't just confined to the home. They will go to school, they will go to other spaces that they're exposed to, and that allows them to formulate their own personality and, forge their own way in life. But it does not necessarily mean that if I am born in a certain family, I become my mother, I become my father. I do have the opportunity, but it is highly likely that I will pick up certain tendencies, and not all of them are good. So it is important that my parents or whoever, or you know, I view in the parental figure, you know, forges a beautiful compass for me, because at the end of the day, and I'll use me as an example, at the end of the day, they are the same for my compass and what I believe is the right way to go. I hope I answered that question.
Sonia, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Belinda. Could one of Ellen White's famous books, The Adventist Home? Yeah, you're trending, and you've become encouraging the young ladies to study Adventist Home. Now, in that book, Ellen White says, next to God, the mother's power for good is the strongest known on earth. Her smile, her encouragement may be an inspiring force. Her influence will reach on through time and eternity. Does this mean that a child just truly needs a mother and that's it?
Well, not exactly. No. I believe that actually, if we look at some of the work that's been done, especially in psychology regarding the development of children in single-parent homes, I mean, for example, I think some 5-10 years ago, this particular doctor from China, some Dr. Yang or Zhan, I forget, they did this study whereby they took 30 children born from families with two parents, and then they took 30 children from families born with single parents, and they found that there was significantly more gray matter in the children who came from single parent homes. The reason why that's significant is because large volumes of gray matter are more linked with slower development. So children who come from the homes that had a single parent, it's like you're already starting with a disadvantage and your body equally reacts to that. So yes, a mother is important, but if we can see the human body itself reflecting the lack of a parent in the children who come from single parent homes, I think it suffices to say that a mother is as important as a mother is alone, not sufficient.
Thank you. And thank you, Maria, for your comment. Maria says parents' presence is parents that actually make time to have a conversation with the child. Only if they have time to actually talk to children and are approachable, you can know your children and what they need or what they're going through in their life. Through conversation, you guide a child, you make them open to you, you get to know each other. A relationship is built on trust and confidence. Time is important. Thank you so much, Maria. And I think this is what we said earlier in the beginning, that yes, you need to not only be a parent, but also to be a present parent as well. Now, in manuscript releases 31, Sister White again says, one well-ordered, well-disciplined family is a greater power in demonstrating the efficiency of Christianity than all the sermons in the world. When fathers and mothers realize how their children copy them, they will carefully watch every word and gesture. Tabo, why is this statement so profound in the times that we are living in?
It means that we are models as parents for our children, and God has placed us and has given us this great responsibility, not only to just get people or get children to be raised, because anyone can do that. Anyone can feed a child, anyone can clothe a child, but it's more than that. Parents have got the responsibility to shape the moral fundamentals of children, and in order to make them human beings, which are also not only good citizens but candidates of heaven. So our responsibility is far greater as parents, and I'm speaking and I'm saying we because I'm a parent. We as parents have got a greater responsibility to lead children, to lead this small little brains that are growing, to be believers. We are the first preachers to them, not only in by talking, saying things, but they are watching. In fact, they do more watching than hearing what we say. They watch what we're saying. So we become models in that regard. So it's a great responsibility. So for you to just remove yourself from a life of a person who is supposed to be following in your footsteps, it's a great loss, and that's why this topic is very important. That you have removed part of their lives from them as a father or as a mother. You have there are some things that they will never experience. For example, I take it like my wife. My wife doesn't know what it means to have a father, right? So each and every day she watches me as I become a father to my children, and she becomes in awe of what a father is supposed to do. What a father is, how fathers react, how fathers guide, how fathers rebuke the children, and all that. So a part of her life has been removed in that, and she only has to learn it from me. So I think I agree fully with that statement from manuscript releases.
And then would you say that at times we are too hard on parents because like you're saying now that you are trying to be that example of a father and your wife is watching through you what that example is? Is it possible that we may also become parents and just automatically expect them to know everything about a role that, perhaps how you grew up is what you're going to reflect on your child? Is there a tendency to become a bit too hard on them, Belinda?
Um, I actually honestly don't know, because I feel like while it's quite obvious that you can't be expected to automatically know everything about parenting, ultimately the decision
Yeah.
to become a parent is one that you made. And once you make that decision, then you have to be earnest and honest in your efforts to be a parent. Yes, of course, there are things that you're not going to know. There are places where you are going to waver. For example, I always say, I was saying to some young people a few weeks ago that um, if you look at parenting, for example, mothers and fathers, by socialization, mothers are responsible for the nurture and the love, while fathers tend to be responsible for the structure and the discipline. Okay, so both those things have to be there in the household. But you often find that sometimes you as a, for example, when I watch my husband being a disciplinarian in the house, I look at him and I'm very critical of what he's doing, because I think, oh, my little baby boyki, I mean, how dare he speak to him like that, so I possibly have those, I give him the side eye, like, what are you doing, and I mean, I'm sure that he has those moments where he looks at me and thinks this woman is babying this boy, you know so yeah, it's possibly true that obviously there's sometimes we are a tad bit too hard on parents, but in a lot of instances where people are hard on certain parents, I have found that it's because those parents are lacking in their duty as parents. Okay, I mean, there's obvious where it's a misstep. Okay, you genuinely didn't know what to do, like when you become first time parents, you don't know what to do. For example, when my son was a baby, when I was potty training him, I was told by people, you must beat him up because he should know that he should not pee on himself. That is literally the biggest parenting mistake of my life. To date, I cry about it because I listen. Black people are like, you must hit that boy, But obviously, and his principal at school was like, you've never met a 5-year-old that pees on himself. He will get potty trained eventually, So there are those missteps, like I beat up my child because I was told you must hit him, you must know when he's potty training. But then there is the obvious, you beat up your child because you've got your own frustrations. Like when your child is walking past and you're irritated, just smack him across the face. Okay. So I think that there are times when we need to be hard on parents because they are responsible for their duties. But on the other hand, there are times when we can let them get away with it because honestly, we all make mistakes.
Indeed, we all make mistakes. Thank you, Denford, for your comment. Denford says being a parent is more than the biological ability to procreate, but involves also grooming and raising the children in harmony with the principles of the one who gave them to you. Thank you. And thank you, Kitso, as well, for your comment. Says, from as early as birth, children take note of all our personalities and behaviors. Since the birth of my daughter, I have learned to be okay, to take care of what I say and what I do and what I watch. One time at age 5, she says to mom, Papa is watching people fighting on TV. At that moment, I was struck and now am careful about what I watch. Indeed, children will learn from us and they learn all things. Maria says, true, single parents, especially mothers, try a lot to play both roles. And as a mother, there is only a certain extent you can go to cover the part of the father. Imagine a lady that has a lack of presence of a father. Those girls tend to an early age uh, long for attention for men, and at times older men, or at times begin to hate or rebellious towards the opposite sex. Bonile, what do you think of that statement that Maria has said about the effects of a child growing up without a father figure? A girl child specifically she's addressing.
I think Maria is partially right. I think the effect of not having a parent, and we'll consider the girl child that doesn't have the father figure. I think she could be right in that she's given us one example of how the effect may manifest. In some cases, the girl child may resent men altogether. So I think that there is a very negative aspect. Sometimes women growing up in that setup tend to come off too strong, but only because they've had to, probably stand on their own a lot more and were less, didn't have the protection of that father figure. So the effects manifest in different ways, but I do acknowledge that there is definitely a lot of negativity that will flow from the absence of any parent, whether it be the mother figure or the father figure. The effects may manifest differently depending on the experience and what how the child was brought up at the end of the day. But she has brought one example of how that a child in a situation like that will be affected and how they may react to that situation.
But would you say that it is easier for fathers to be absent from their children's lives than it is for a mother to be absent? Is
Well,
it easier for a father to walk away and just leave his family and go and start a whole new family than it would be for a mother? And I know we talked about this one on last week, for a mother to maybe want to start a new life and leave her child behind.
I think it definitely is, but only because of the setup and how responsibilities manifest, especially in the early stages of a child. So you'll find that with the child in earlier stages, we have to breastfeed. They need the feminine care will become more, is needed a lot more during the earlier stages. I'm not disregarding the father's role at that time, but moms will definitely take on the role, and I only see this in children's court and perhaps in maintenance court. So you find they're stuck with the children, perhaps not because they also didn't want to run away, but because they were forced to take on the responsibility. They had to still breastfeed, they still had to take primary care of that child, and so they're left with the children. So I don't know if I should say that it is a lot easier because of that, but I don't know if it is the case that moms also want to be there when a situation like that prevails.
All right, thank you. Kuda, sometimes it is not by choice that one ends up with just one of the parents, but how then can that kind of a void be made up? When you only have one parent and the other one is absent, and it's not really by choice, but when life happens. Just unmute for us, please. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. I think on this particular point, I think I actually have some personal experience on that because I lost my father when I was young. And one thing which I've seen, the reality of it is that it seems to me it is almost a Herculean task. I won't say an impossible task, but it's a Herculean task especially from the perspective of women raising sons. Because if I'm to look at my own upbringing, I had my mother who lost her own father when she was young. So right off the bat, she doesn't have that male presence. Now she has children, and then she loses a husband, and she's got boys she also needs to raise. So firstly, you never had that exposure of being raised by a man so that you can at least ascertain what male qualities are that are needed to be in a son. But on top of that, now you're tasked with raising boys as well. And not only that, because I think what a lot of people also just overlook is the fact that single parents, from the moment they become single parents, they have to make very difficult decisions. Decisions such as, do I choose provision or do I choose nurturing? Because in certain cases, it's impossible to do both, because you've got children not going to school, but you also have to be at work. Because you don't have a partner, you may need to do extra hours. But if you're doing extra hours so that you can provide for your kids, then your kids may not grow up with you as a parent there. But then now when you're trying to be a parent to these kids, and let's say you're a woman, now you have to imagine how a man should react to this scenario. So you might lean on stereotypes that a man may be supposed to be hard and strong. So you might be overly harsh, but then now you realize I still need to be a mom to this person. So there's a lot of confusion. And I think like the best example I can give of this is, one day I did something that was very deserving of a beating, and then my mother decides to grace me with the presence of my own belt. After she does this, she then instructs me to go get ice cream and then sit next to her as I watch cartoons of my choice. Now, this is very confusing, because one moment you're my enemy and you've just brought upon me the wrath of revelations, but then the next moment you're trying to give me a hug or mother me and be soft and kind. So you see a lot of juggling on the parts of single parents, so much so that if there's any conclusion I've made is that single moms or single parents in general can become very, very good parents. But they more often than not have to make a choice over what qualities or what traits they can try their best to lean on, like a bit of nurturing and provision, but to be able to give the well-rounded, all-rounded effect of what both parents in a home would bring, I think it's next to impossible. But I can't say it can't be done, but it's very difficult.
Difficult, but not impossible. Let's just take Joe's comment here. Joe says, absent parents. Some parents are there physically, but far away, busy building trust and wealth for their children, forgetting that they are distracted. The verse says, then will I profess unto them, go away. I never knew you, depart from me. Would you say that there could be a tendency of resentment? I mean, I know Tabo spoke about this one earlier about, trying to have the best for your child and then neglecting these other things. But could there be some resentment, that maybe your parent was absent, trying to help you, accomplish those goals, those dreams, the career that you want, and later on in life, having all these material things, could there be some resentment? Is it justified even to have that kind of resentment, or is it being ungrateful on the child's part and not understanding the sacrifice that your parent made to try to get you those things?
I think, unfortunately for parents, it would seem to me that a child being incapable of understanding the lengths that you had to go through, I think it just comes with parenting. Because I doubt that there are any parents on the planet who believe that their children understand the sacrifices or the things they had to go through for the kids to be where they are. Unfortunately, because of what we see in the world, because of what is being perpetuated through media, there's this sense of, oh, my parents should have been this, but my parents should have been that. So is there resentment? I think it all depends on either the relationship you have with your parents and also what phase of development you are at personally. Because there is a time whereby when you're younger, you're seeing how other kids have all these things, or how other kids maybe have parents attending certain parent-teacher conferences and all these other small things. And because to you as a child, you don't have the full scope, you don't understand that the 1 hour, 2 hours spent at your parent-teacher conference is the amount of money that is necessary for you to have transport to go to school for the rest of the month. Like, everything is so delicate that you can't be everything and everywhere. But like, for a child to understand that, it's very difficult. So the older you get and the more you start to realize just how difficult it is, that's when you start realizing that relationships with parents become closer, because it just becomes more inconceivable how this person was able to do all these things. And resentment towards parents is also, there are people who would have that, certainly, and to a certain degree, their pain, not even to a certain degree, their pain is real and it's valid, because they feel the absence of the parent, and they feel that if they had both legs when they were growing up, then maybe they'll be able to walk and run just like how the other kids do. But then also the ability to understand the reality of the world we live in, and worse, we're in Africa. So before you've even gone far, you're a leg down. It is quite unfortunate that there are people who would have resentment towards their parents. But personally, from my side, I just see it as miraculous how someone can actually, hell, I'm even struggling to make it on my own. How you do it with 3, 4, 5 children. There are people who are heroes out here. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Let me direct this one at Tabo and Belinda. Should parents stay together for the sake of the children? Does it really help the children if the relationship between the parents is toxic and they're just together for the sake of the children?
Before I answer that question, I think I also wanted to comment on the issue of absent or present but absent parents. The ones that are there, but they are just there to occupy a space of a father, but they are not doing that. Most of our African families suffer from that, whereby fathers, and I'll particularly speak about fathers because I'm passionate about that discussion. Fathers are there, and fathers have a tendency of making as if the mother is more experienced with their children than they are. My wife usually say, we became parents the same time. There's no one who is more experienced than the other. When she became a mother, I also became a father. So parents have got this tendency of making as if the mother is more experienced and they know more about the children than the fathers do. And I totally disagree with that, because fathers can play an equally important role in their children's life as much as their mothers do. And I'll make an example, and I'm not talking just from the top of my head. I'll make an example that with me in my house, my children, I am the first point of call when everything happens. When my son cannot sleep at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, the first person that he calls or comes to is daddy. When my son is hungry, comes to daddy. When my son is hurt, comes to daddy. So I play that role, and I make sure that I play a role whereby I am there in all aspects, in all facets of life, because my wife is not more experienced with the children than I am. Fathers have a tendency of chasing the children to their mothers. When she's crying, no, take them to their mothers. When they're hungry, take them to their mothers. When fathers can play that same role exactly and become fathers who are present, and that also not only improves the relationship between you and your children, it also improves the relationship that you have with your wife in as far as taking care of the family and the children is concerned. So it goes both ways. Coming to your question, whereby you're asking, should parents stay in the same house or stay just for the sake of the children? I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea, because children watch the relationship that you have. They know if it's fake. They know if it's real. They know if it's genuine. And what you are doing, you're also instilling in them that they can also have a fake relationship when they grow up, at the time that they are, that they can stay with someone even though the relation or the feelings are not genuine. So it's a very bad idea from the point of principle itself to say it does not make sense for you to pretend in front of your children. And secondly, you are also teaching them to do the same when they grow up. And you'll have a problem when you talk to them and say, but why are you staying with somebody that you love? And they'll say, but you did the same thing as well. You were staying with mom for our sake. And that did not do much to us because it taught us that we can always pretend in relationships. So I'd rather tell them the truth, and they know my genuine feelings towards the mother and what the problems are and how we are trying to solve them, if at all we are trying to solve them. So it's important to be transparent and honest about it.
I think
Wow.
to add
So,
to that,
yeah.
I think to add to that, nobody can argue that it's better for parents to be in the same house beating each other up than for the father to be living down the road. Okay, that literally does not make sense in any way, shape, or form. I mean, obviously, we are cognizant of the fact that God hates divorce, and as a church, obviously, we promote reconciliation. We promote things going well, but that sometimes is contrary to reality. Okay, and I often feel like, and this is especially true, I think, for mothers, we use the line "I'm staying for my children" as an excuse to not face the truth of I don't want to leave this person regardless of how he is treating me. And I wonder how you say you're doing it for your children when your children are watching you every day being treated like dirt, being spoken to like, your children watch the tension, your children watch. I mean, in a perfect world, listen, even if you were to say, let's stay for the children, in a perfect world, of course, you'd be able to stay together. Good morning, baby, I'm fine. When you're in the bedroom, you're like, oh, get away from me. But that doesn't even happen. That will translate even to the kitchen, even to outside, even to the car. You won't be able to to be civil with each other. It just doesn't work. At some point, you get frustrated, you get irritated, and for your children to watch that growing up, they, like my husband said, your children grow up to think that that is normal behavior, and it's not right. And from a young age, they are modeled to believe that marriage is a war zone where we must be fighting, where we must be throwing shade at each other, where we must be, no, go and ask your mother, no, go and ask your mother, no, I need money for fees, go and ask your mother, no, don't go, and that's not good. I don't think that anybody can reasonably argue that that is better for children than separation. Although, of course, we encourage, reconciliation first.
I like that. We encourage reconciliation first. There's something else that Joshua likes here. Joshua says, I like the way Belinda looks at hubby when he's talking. Indeed, inspiring. Keep up the good work, Ma. Wonderful indeed. Says a lot about the relationship. Yeah. Thank you, Joshua, for your comments. Adenia says, my parents got divorced. I grew up with my father and we had a strong bond when he was alive. And he treated me with love. I don't know what is mother's love. My father played both parenting. Now I wish to see my husband treat me the same way my father did. Thank you so much for sharing that, Zadinia. She goes on to say, what made me the most sad is when I would see my friends together with both parents, and those living with both parents in the same house make you feel like you are not complete. When your parents are divorced, it is sad and affects your life. Thank you so much for sharing that one. Bonide, coming to you, this idea of shared custody, which seems to happen sometimes when couples divorce. Is it really for the good of the child, or is it just to satisfy the needs of the parents?
That's a very difficult one. But I think it all boils down to the relationship and the level of maturity at the stage of separation. Divorce at that stage has become a reality. Parents have to live apart, but it's how they look at life and where they are now. And it will definitely affect the children. In my view, I think that it's not the most wonderful arrangement, only because I feel that stability is a very huge part of a child's growth. So if you have a child live in one location for 1 week and have a child live in another the next week, um, I don't feel that that's the best way you can establish stability for a child, especially with the early stages of life. Perhaps if they're older, they're in university or whatever, then it gets better. But there are also other ways of strategizing a parenting plan. So one can have custody, but because you're both parents, you still remain guardians of the parent. So you can both make decisions on behalf of the child and for the best interest of the child. The second thing is that all parents have the right to contact or the right to access to their children. So even if one parent has custody or they have the primary residence of the child, there is still things like visitation rights that can be established as a means of trying to have both parents as fixtures in the child's life. I personally don't think shared custody is a wonderful thing simply because of the lack of stability that it offers. You can't have a child live in one place 1 week, have these rules implemented on them, and then the next week they're in another household, and then they need to do that and still function normally as a human being, in normal life. I feel that that's too heavy on children. And usually, custody can only be discussed for children under 18. So those are very important part of a child's life. It's the developmental stages as well. So you really, really want, stability to be a huge part of their life. So for that one reason, I think shared custody is a wonderful idea. There are other
There is
ways
some
of doing it, yes.
you raise some eye-opening points. But another thing that happens during these divorce situations is a reluctance on the part of the mother to at times, sue for child care. The money, what sometimes, other countries it's known as maintenance, to even without divorce, if two got together, they had a child, but they're not married, there tends to be that reluctance to go to the courts and to sue for maintenance to help to raise the child. Why do you think that is?
Okay. The justice system is the first. Um, I think that it takes too long to get a response, and sometimes you actually don't get the benefit that you need to out of the whole process because you're going to go and discuss the child's needs and establish an amount, try and split it between the two, and you might find that the mother still carries the huge chunk as the primary carer. If she is the primary carer, if the father is the primary carer, he might have to take on a larger part as well because not all expenses will be established in the discussion. That's the reality of it. In most cases, that's the situation. But also, I think the reluctance comes from a place where you can't really force someone to care for someone they don't care for. Maintenance is part of caring for a child, and if you don't care, you don't care. That's the reality of it. And some people see it that way, and from an emotional part, it may be draining as well. It may expose part of the person's relationship or the parent's relationship with the child or their attitude rather to the child, and the primary carer might not want to expose the child to things like that.
But can you? I mean, all right. But we'll come back to this one. We'll come back to this one. Alma, thank you so much for your comment. Alma says, "Thank God it's not impossible. I did it with 4 boys. The reason my own mother's brutality. I swore if the day came and I had kids, it would be different. It was tough, but it was intentional, and we won." So sometimes you want to correct the mistakes that you experienced as a child. We also have a question here from Anonymous. Could I direct it at you? The question says, in Africa, we believe in the community or extended family also raising a child. To what extent is this true or false or beneficial or detrimental?
This one is it's a complicated one because in some cases you don't necessarily get that much exposure to your extended family, so you become just a close-knit family. Maybe if you go abroad or you're not necessarily close to where your relatives are, and then in some cases you may get exposed to your extended family and you wish that you were a close-knit family abroad away from extended family. So it all depends on the people that you're exposed to, and I think it also gets a little bit more complicated because every single person has a certain ethos, philosophy that they believe life should be lived as. So there can be a little bit of that instability in your child, in your life as a child, if one day you're with your grandmother who believes in doing things a certain way. And I think Sibonile, if I'm not mistaken, also touched on that at one point you're exposed to people who believe a certain way, do things a certain way, there's certain rules, a certain structure. Then now when someone else is coming in, or you're with your grandparents, or when you're with your uncles and whoever, they've got a completely a different way of thinking. And sometimes that way of thinking might undermine the way of thinking that your parents have, or the way that they want you to grow up. In certain cases, let's say your family is the only part of the family that's Adventist. Well, now you have a problem, because you may have uncles who now tell you that it's okay to drink, or it's okay to have a little bit of fun here and there. Let's go out on a Friday night. It's not a big deal. You know, your mother is uptight. But then now when you go back home, obviously that does not apply. So the result of that is young people who have a sense of confusion because of that lack of stability. So yes, it takes a community with a very strong foundational base, which is the home where your parent is, or preferably where both parents are, to have that initial set of beliefs, initial set of doing things. And then if there's anyone who you're exposed to, they are not with you long enough to alter the core beliefs that your parents are trying to give you.
Thank you, Kuda. Belinda, should stepmothers, or a step-parent rather, discipline a stepchild?
I see the little smile you give there when you're asking that question. and I know that part of it is inspired by the stereotype that comes with the name step-parent. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe that when a person becomes a step-parent, they must take on the role in an honest and earnest way. And if you become a step-parent earnestly, you must do everything that a parent would do. Okay? You must nurture, you must love, and you must also provide the structure and the discipline, like I mentioned earlier. So yes, a step-parent must absolutely discipline. Okay? Of course, there's the discipline comes with, even if you are the most loving, adoring step-parent on earth, your discipline will always be met with skepticism, okay? Because automatically you're a step-parent. You are starting from a negative, okay? You're a step-parent. The assumption is that you are going to be evil, okay? So no matter how much good and great things you have done to this child, the one time you discipline the child, you'll be like, whoa, this child is finished, you know? So definitely, I genuinely believe that a step-parent must discipline the child, of course, if they're doing it in love, okay? The unfortunate reality is that in many instances, we've seen that discipline come in the form of abuse, okay? Or abuse which is masquerading as discipline, okay? Where you see this stepchild having rules and regulations that are far greater than that of their siblings, that are the children of the step parent, okay? Or where you see stuff that is outrightly abusive, okay? I mean, when you speak to people and they tell you stories of their step parents, you can't believe it. Like you literally, you can't believe it. It's so unbelievable. I know my sister's friend was telling us a story about how she went, there used to be like this prescription, like into the army when you were young, and her stepmom convinced the father to take her to that prescription when she was 14. I mean, that does not make sense. I don't think a biological mother would take their child to war or whatever at 14. Okay. I mean, of course, there's somebody who commented how their mother was so evil, they probably would have done that. It's not always black and white. But outside of the abusive stuff that step parents can do, I absolutely believe that a step parent, the child should view the step parent as their parent. So the same way you expect love, discipline, care from your own parents, you should expect the same from a step parent. In the ideal world, of course.
Yeah, but would you say that at times people are a bit too hard on the step parents? Because I've seen real biological parents discipline their children in ways that you would shriek.
For sure.
Really?
I mean, like I mentioned earlier, already the role of step parent, as soon as you have step attached to your name, Whatever
Yeah.
you do will be met with skepticism. It will be viewed from a negative light, no matter how, like I said, honest and earnest you are in your efforts. Even if you are known, even if people go around saying, I've never seen a step parent like Belinda. She is like the most honest mother. She is so caring. She is so giving. Let me smack that child once. Yo, this is what step parents do. You see, we told you this is what they do. So yeah,
Yeah.
people are definitely too harsh on those step parents that are genuinely good people. But step parents, some of them, of course, not even some, a lot of them tend to be quite dodgy. Okay. So, and I think the behavior of those ones, unfortunately, that's what happens. One bad fruit spoils the rest. So, and in the case of step parents, not even one bad fruit, it's a couple of bad fruits, or several of them. Okay. They have they have destroyed basically the reputation of step parents. I mean, we have got a
Yeah.
friend of ours from varsity. She discovered that her stepmother was her stepmother when she was in grade 7. And that's because she had to take her birth certificate to school to write grade 7 exams. And when she saw the mother's name on the birth certificate, she was surprised because she knew her mom maybe to be Joanna, and now it's written Sammy, and she's thinking that's when she discovered. And I mean, that was one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard in my life, to say that she did not, this mother was so good that her children did not even know that she was a stepmother because she came into their life when they were very young. Okay. So obviously that woman cannot be, if she beats up a child, she cannot be seen as, oh, she's evil. Okay. But I'm pretty sure whenever she did it, there were some people who gave her the side eye.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Tabo, we have a question here from Anonymous. The question reads, I am a widower and my wife died 5 years ago. We have 3 children born in our marriage. It has not been easy raising our children alone. I feel like I fail in many aspects. I have considered remarrying, but being a product of a blended family and the abuse I sustained under my stepmother, I would not ever want my children to be subjected to such. The loneliness sometimes gets too much for me, but I would like to prioritize the needs of our children first. I don't have people to share this with, but again, if I remarry and my new wife starts to treat my children badly, I would never be able to forgive myself. Please advise what would be ideal. A lonely widower considering remarriage but afraid of what might happen if he marries the wrong woman.
I mean, that's a two-edged sword. Um, First of all, it just says to us that being a single parent is is a difficult task that anyone can ever experience. The ideal that God has made, in as far as raising children is concerned, is that there should be two parties, the father and the mother, who help each other on that. And I assure you that if both people pull up their socks or pull up their weight the way they're supposed to be, it becomes very easy to do that. It's not as cumbersome, as burdensome as it is. But coming to the question, I think the anonymous must just could just stick to what they believe. That I believe that if I do this on my own, it's going to be best for my children. I always say that it's important to prioritize the children and to make sure that we give them the best that they can ever get, because we are talking about next generations here. Um, when God put men and women together so that they can reproduce or they can produce children, it was with the idea and understanding that we are putting together um, seeds for the next generations. So anonymous, in as far as I'm concerned, he is concerned and says, what kind of generation am I going to breed? A generation that may potentially be abused if I get married, so that I can fulfill my own needs. Because here is my needs versus my children's potential danger and risk. And doing that risk assessment, I think it's the most sober thing that he could have ever done. So for me, I would assess the situation and say the best thing for my children is to do this. If the best thing for his children is to get or remarry and have a stepmother, then go for it. But if the best for his children is to stay by himself and raise the children by himself, as difficult as it is, then let it be. It's not going to be an easy way out either way. Remarrying and also raising the children. It's not going to be easy because there's also issues around adaptation with the new mother and things like that. So I think either way, it's just a matter of praying and for God's guidance in that regard and doing the best for the children.
So what are you saying?
Can I say something?
Yeah, but you come in there.
No, go ahead.
Once you have children, you can't think about yourself anymore. This is what I'm hearing. But Belinda, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was also going to say that one of the mistakes that happens, especially when it's the mother that dies, a lot of fathers, unfortunately, especially amongst us as Africans, they did not take, they were not responsible for the day-to-day upbringing of their children. So they become very overwhelmed, and they literally grab the first woman that passes by who's willing to be a wife. Okay. And I mean, I've seen it happen so many times that a wife dies in April and her husband is married in June. Okay. There's no way, unless of course you were having an affair with the person all this time, there's no way that you could have known that person long enough for you to make a genuine assessment of how much of a parent they can be. But I think Anonymous is not in that place where he's desperately looking for somebody else to come over and take over his responsibility. And I've often felt that a lot of bitterness that comes from stepmoms, and I mean, I saw this in a conversation on Facebook, in another Facebook group, that comes with stepmothers, is that thing of, I know I'm not here for love. I know I'm here to take care of these kids. And that makes them to be very resentful. But Anonymous is not in that spot. Anonymous is saying, listen, I've been taking care of my kids for 5 years. I'm doing this. I want a person for myself. I want a person who's going to come here and love me and going to be my partner. And that person, and obviously if that person comes, one, like my husband said, he would have done an assessment of the person because he's not in a rush to marry the next woman who passes down who's got a skirt. He's going to take time to assess the person. And when he does, the person is going to come here into this marriage knowing I'm here for love. I'm not here to be a stepmother. And if she is loved by her husband, surely, if you are genuinely, honestly, and earnestly loved by the person, the chances of you loving their children as well, they're going to be better. Because most stepmothers I have observed who are evil are those who are just brought here, put in the kitchen, take care of the kids while I go and live my life. Okay, so I feel like Anonymous, yes, I mean, he must go with his instinct if he genuinely believes that a stepmother will be a bad idea. But I feel like Anonymous, you are in a very good spot because you're not desperate, number one. Number two, you've already been taking care of your kids for some time. So a person that's coming into your marriage is coming to an addition. She's coming into a already functioning, loving unit. So she's not coming here to be a servant. And she will see that and possibly have a good relationship with your children. I don't know.
But Belinda, we also have situations. Okay, I'll come to you, but I just want to catch Belinda there. We also have situations of parents who compete for affection with the spouse, with the child. I mean, the biological parent competing for affection of the spouse for the child, some jealousy, envy. Does that even make sense for that kind of a situation where you hear a spouse saying, I also want to come first, even before the children?
I mean, that says a lot about the relationship in the first place. It is not even about the children. That just says something about the two of us, that our relationship is not okay. Because the love that a father has for his children is a love that is different from the love that he has for me. And if he is doing an honest job of loving me, I should not be jealous of my children. Okay? And I mean, I always say to women who are pregnant for the first time, I always say to them, you are going to see a different version of your husband. You're going to see him in a way that you've never seen him before. He's going to be so in love. He's like, my husband is completely overwhelmed with love for his children. Like, I'm so in awe of the kind of father that he is. but I'm also in awe of the kind of husband that he is to me. You know, I mean, the first time I saw him smack our son was because my son had smacked me, you know, and he was really, I could see it in his face that he was really annoyed that don't hit your mother, you know. So that gave me, I mean, I was a bit sad that my kid was smacked, but it also gave me that proud, well, he loves his kid, but he smacked him for me,
My
you know.
defender, my
So,
hero.
so there is that thing that just says, yeah. So I feel like if you're jealous of your kids, it's because your spouse is not doing the right thing towards you. The same thing with the step parent who may possibly come here and be jealous. It's because they know they're not here for love. They're not given the love. If they're given the love and they're still jealous, then they're just an outrightly evil person. Okay, there are people like that. Anyways, who always feel that a stepchild is a representation of a type of connection that I will never have with this man. Okay, he's had a love before that was before me. So they will always be resentful towards that, and they're just people who are evil. There's nothing that we can do about it. But if you are doing an earnest and honest job of loving your spouse, that resentment and jealousy should not be there.
We wanted to say something before we move. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say you were asking a question. I think it's important. You're asking a
Yes.
question to say so when you now have children, what about your needs? Do you forfeit them? You don't take care of yourself. Now, I want to say to you, and I want to explain that by an example about myself. Before I got married, I would drive at ridiculous speeds. At some point, I did 255 kilometers per hour. Um, there are some risks that I would take. But immediately after I got married and I have children,
Yeah.
that mentality immediately changed. I do not do that anymore. Right. Um, it's because there are people that are now in the picture whom I'm responsible for. I cannot take such risks willy-nilly. I need to be responsible. I need to think before I do that. Although maybe I may still love speed, I don't do it anymore. I don't do that anymore. Why? Because I know that doing that is not only putting me at risk, it's also put my wife at risk. It also put my children at risk. So when you start to have children, there are things that you would not necessarily do, but for the sake of your family and for the sake of your children, you do. Another example would be something like church, going to church. Do you know that the choice of the church that you go to is solely dependent on whether your children will be fulfilled in that church or not about you? That's how extreme it actually goes to. It goes to a point where even the location where you go to live in, the first people that come into your mind, will my children be safe here? You step aside. Will my wife be safe here? So when it comes to issues such as me, myself, and I, that becomes blurry when you are married, when you have more so when you have children, it becomes blurry about that. You say, I have done my life, I have lived my life. Now, what I need to do is to ensure that these people have the best so that their future can be bright.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen to that. Swanile, Anonymous here has a question. Anonymous says, I am a young girl at UNAM, that is University of Namibia, in my second year. I struggle with sex. I sleep around a lot and I don't know why. Some of my clients are from my local church. I never knew my father. It was a hit and run. And my mother doesn't like talking about him. If going to church has not helped, what really can? Am I bewitched? It's a sad one there coming from Anonymous.
I think that I don't think that she's bewitched. But I do acknowledge that there are deep spiritual issues that she needs to deal with. I acknowledge that I I genuinely believe that in broken homes, what the devil is trying to what one of the things that the devil has achieved in that is stealing away identity from people. At least they don't know what their identity is. And so you have identity crises all over, people trying to reestablish themselves in their lives, that being the parents, and then the child actually wondering who they are. Now, the worst part about Anonymous is that she actually still know her father, and those are things that she needs to deal with. I think that she needs help, and it has to be spiritual help. And I suppose this is actually a discussion that we must have here, that in situations like this, the church actually needs to be present, in not only just allowing them to be part of the church family, but realizing that there will be people who will suffer deep and have deep spiritual experiences, negatively so, and actually need people in the church, need structures in the church that will assist them. I believe that she needs counseling, but she also needs a lot of prayer. She needs to establish who she is, who her God is, and all of that, and what the word actually says about her. So I believe that she actually, unfortunately, at second year in university, needs to really go back to her foundation and really establish who she is, where she's coming from, what God says about her, who she should be, and map her way forward from there. So it's going back to her foundation, and yes, she's probably about 2022 now, but that is the reality and the effect of the situation that we speak of today.
So she needs to, your advice is that she needs to focus on herself. But I'm
True,
also
and
thinking that, there's this tendency to think that people want a perfect upbringing, even if you have both parents. Is there such a thing? Is it just easier to just say, because of this situation, I ended up like this and I'm making these choices?
so I have a theory, and this is how I've dealt with my own, because today's topic actually will apply to me as well. But I have this theory that, look, firstborns have their own triggers. They probably think that life was too hard on them. Their parents went to the studies as everyone else was. Everyone else got it so easy. Middle children have their own triggers. Everyone else got their attention. They didn't. And then lastborns, will have their own triggers. They're too spoiled. They just can't manage life. And so, in every situation, to say that we will establish a perfect balance, I don't know. I think some situations are better than others. But the reality of it is that, in all of that, we need to find the beauty of where we are, and try and forge our lives forward. Because if we had to find out about each other's lives, we all have something to complain about, even in our most perfect circumstances. We're just human, and this is how things often play out.
Yeah. And I think we said it on one of our earlier sessions that there is nothing wrong with seeking therapy. We may not believe in it as Africans, but there is nothing wrong with actually seeking therapy. Thank you, Swanile. Kuda, I am a 17-year-old boy who grew up in a household where mom and dad were arguing. Mom left my dad when I was 8 years old. She could not take the toxic marriage anymore. Dad later remarried because he was more financially stable. My three siblings and I lived with him. Dad is emotionally and physically absent. My stepmother hates my siblings and I and always talks down at us. Sometimes she does not give us food. Dad is always preoccupied with work and other things, but at least he pays for our living expenses. I hardly see mom, and the last I heard, she was living a promiscuous life. I struggle with suicidal thoughts and depression, and of late, I try to distract the pain by drinking heavily with friends. I hate that I was born in this family and despise my life. How can I find peace? I don't buy the whole God story. If He loves us, why did He allow me to be raised like this? Struggling teenager.
Yeah, you ask a very interesting question, and the first thing that I can say is that you first need to introduce a certain semblance of order in your life. If there's one thing I can suggest, you can start with exercise. It's crazy, it's not something that people enjoy doing, but one thing which I've found is with exercise, it's something that you consistently do, and it introduces order into your life. And if there's one thing you're consistently doing, the next thing that you need to realize is that we are not responsible for the actions of other people towards us. It's very unfortunate that you have to grow up in a home whereby your father is absent. But then the reality is you're not going to, it's not a Disney movie. You're not going to go to your father and somehow magically convince him that, look, take care of me, be this type of person, because chances are he's aware of that, but he's not doing that. And for whatever reasons he has are not for me to speculate. Unfortunately, you have a big task of now introducing order into your own life, something that was not done for you. So start simply, start exercise, do something that is continuous, that is consistent. Then from there, ask yourself, what are the things that I want to have stable in my own life? What can I do to improve my own life? Since you're saying you're 17, maybe you're in school, what subject do I need to improve on? Find things that you can improve, just one small thing every single day. Make your bed. Try to get to know your brother. If the relationship with your father might be absolutely horrible and he might not be taking care of you, but what is your relationship with your siblings? Can you change that? If you can improve the relationship between you and your brother, then suddenly your life sucks just a little bit less than it did yesterday. So there's no magic cure that can be said to you that one moment right now your life is going to change completely. But by doing little small things and having a little bit of victory in your life every single day, because I think that the biggest problem that is that you just simply feel like you need a win. And there are many other very inspirational men out there who also who can actually give some balance. I found that people like Jordan Peterson, for example, brilliant man, has a book, 12 Rules on Life. Very small things can help you change your life, but the one thing that you need to realize right now is that you need to start making decisions that you can control, introduce a little bit of control into your life, and that can be very helpful to you.
What about this issue of food? Because Anonymous talks about the stepmother not giving food to him and the siblings, and yet the father seems to be working really hard. What can one do in that situation?
Yeah, no, those are very difficult circumstances, because I'm guessing that if I say tell your father that you're not getting food, it's not going to be a brand new idea that occurs to you, because at this point you've possibly tried. So I think that at some point, if you're able to get other family members, adults that you can maybe talk to about it, people that you can trust who can maybe intervene in the situation. Because if she's already not giving you food, I doubt that there's any reasoning or conversation you can have with her that can change that. And if you've already tried talking to your father, actually, let me say, if you've not tried talking to your father about it, then maybe that's a conversation you might try having, and maybe you might see that in a different light. If that doesn't work, maybe you find a grandmother, an uncle, or an aunt, someone you feel you can trust, that you can approach with the matter, so that you can try to get some aid from that. But from what I'm seeing, I think that, especially, I think I want to touch on the drinking, because I see that you added the drinking. It seems as though you're referencing the things that have happened as being the main sources of drinking. It's also part of my idea that your problems, as well as the enjoyment of drinking, might be why you may be drinking. So I think that if you start also looking to taking some personal accountability to say, okay, fine, what can I improve about myself? Clearly, you've mentioned drinking, so you can try to change that. So introducing a little bit of control, but on the matter of food, try to find someone you trust that you can talk to, can help you solve the situation.
Thank you, Kuda. The struggle is real. Anonymous, we hope that helps. And Maria here says, some stepmothers are really, really bad. But my belief is when you take someone with children, you should treat those children the same as your own children. But Belinda is right. I think she's alluding to your earlier comment. As a stepmother, you are being watched, and you probably have to be more to that child than your own. So Yes, it's not all the stepmothers that are like what Anonymous is going through, but some do tend to take their frustrations out. And to those stepmothers who may be watching this program, we really do appeal to you to think about why you are in this relationship. And if you really can't love someone else's child, maybe, as we have been saying, you may consider that this is not for you. This is Real Talk. We are talking about a generation of absent parents. If you are just joining us, we would like to hear from you. So please keep your comments and questions coming in. You can also get in touch with us anonymously. The number will be appearing on the screen. Also, remember to like this program, to like it, to share, and to call your friends to watch it. Now, Tabo, we have a question here from Fogolozi. Thank you so much for your question. He says, my question is directed to Tabo and Belinda. I am married with 6 children with my wife of 11 years. I have seen another woman. I want to take her as a second wife for the benefit of my kids, of course. Do you have any advice on any poisons or witchcraft I can deploy to make this a reality? Okay, this is real talk. So let's get real. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the funny thing is that Mfogolozi is a friend of ours from Swaziland. He's got 6 children, as he says. I did not know the idea. Sorry, I'm just putting it on the charger here. It's just coming.
Mfogolozi, you cannot take on a second wife. End of story. End of discussion. By the way, Mfogolozi is like he's saying he's a friend of ours. We met at varsity, and he told us that he wants to have 7 kids. And we told him, "You are crazy. That's not going to happen. Stop being foolish. You're mad." And he's on 6. They're younger than us, by the way. Him and his wife. They are, I think, boy is 35. They're both 35, and they've got 6 kids. They're going to number 7. And he does not want to take a second wife. I think he was just pulling our leg there, Sonia. So there's no potion that you can use. The only potion you need is to make yourself ready to have that second son, seventh child, and love your wife. But generally, if this were real, if somebody is literally saying, I'm taking a second wife to help my kids, already that person is sitting on the wrong spot, like I said earlier. You're bringing in a wife here to take care of kids. And like I said, there is no woman on earth who sits around reading Mills and Boon, fantasizing about, when I get married, I want to take care of somebody else's kids. No, there's no such, okay? When you fantasize about getting married, you fantasize about meeting the love of your life, falling in love, having 7 kids if possible. But you don't want to get into a marriage for the sake of taking care of somebody else's kids. Yes, you may fall in love with a person who's got kids, and you may love them genuinely as much as you love the person and take them as your kids. But if you get into this marriage with the specific intention, or if the intention towards you is that you are coming into this marriage to take care of these kids, then that marriage is going to be doomed, because you are going to know, I'm here to babysit, okay? I'm here to help wife number 1. Wife number 1 has done the job. She has given the kids. And now I'm here as a nanny, basically, who will not be paid. So if that situation was real, really, we would say, you don't need a portion. You need to just go back and, first and foremost, taking a second wife is a bad idea. It's not right, firstly. Secondly, even if we were not Christians and we believed in polygamy, it would never be right to take a second wife specifically to come and assist with raising your kids.
All right. We are very relieved to know that there is no intention to look for any poison or witchcraft. Well, we accept everything here on Real Talk, including the humor, but you do raise some very interesting points there. So bring the comments coming. Lulu here could have says, but isn't this what results in teenagers losing their way? They try to understand why an absent father does not make an effort, and unfortunately, they end up thinking it's because they are the problem and feel unloved. Want to react to that,
Yes.
Kuda?
Yes, and it's quite unfortunate, but if there's anything that I've realized, and I think my mother can support me on this, you cannot change your parents' mind. Neither can you ever choose to understand your parents. And the thing is, the more you try to do that, all that's going to manifest are your insecurities. Because unfortunately, in everyone, the voice that is the loudest is the voice that puts you down. And the moment you're like, but why does my father do this? Oh, it must be because he doesn't like me. Why wouldn't he like me? Well, people say I'm like this. People say I'm like this. Do you think maybe he sees that? Okay, I'm an awful person. My parents sees that. Everyone else sees that. So I'm just a horrible human being. So unfortunately, for people who have absent parents, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, you have to learn from an earlier stage than most people learn to have a certain control over what you believe, how you take information, and how you remove information. You need to be more assertive about what you're going to do with your life and how you're going to do it, because you already have a disadvantage. So it is unfortunate that there are people who have to be in the situation, but then the reality is, what do you do now? We can sit around the entire day and we try to understand why you believe what you believe, why you think that life is so horrible and that you're hated and no one wants to take care of you. But okay, what can we do now so that you can have a chance to actually have the life you want to have? And I think that's the biggest question that anyone who's in a difficult situation needs to ask. What can I do today that can make my suffering a little less than it was yesterday? And that's the only way to get forward.
Thank you, Nozipo, for your comment. Nozipo says, Kuda, in this world we live in, sometimes talking to relatives is like opening another can of worms. This child sounds like he is out of choices, only grateful for a roof over their heads. Social worker will do, I think. Yes, thank you for that advice to Anonymous. Anonymous, perhaps a social worker. And Denford says, well, Denford is agreeing with you, Kuda, and says, true, this is why church needs to be a safe haven for non-consensual family units, rather than be gossiped about as awkward, etc. God says more than 10 times that he will judge those who abuse the fatherless or the widows in their midst. So instead of just occupying time on unimportant things, the church should step up. The child should be able to at least turn to somebody in church. And that brings me to my question. Swanida, do you think that the family life departments in churches are doing enough to assist children who may be in such situations, or to assist single parents, or to even help groom children to become responsible parents or responsible spouses?
Well, I don't want to criticize but I'll be honest. I think that a lot more presence from our churches will be required in that in such an establishment where a family, especially single parents at home, you need more presence and definitely bringing those together. I mean, there will be days where we acknowledge children with fathers. There's special days like that. It's going to be a Father's Day celebration. We celebrate fathers, children come together and do that. So what happens in a setup where I don't have where I don't have a father? I can't wear a suit to church and celebrate daddies like everyone else does and things like that. So they definitely need to be special care to those to families such as those, establishing structures where male figures within the church actually, are going as far, because there's always a fear. The male figures don't want to be seen going and being too close to single parented structures, because anything could be suggested in a situation like that. So there's so much, I don't know, skepticism that stands in the way of the church actually being there for families like that. The way we view single moms, the way we sometimes single dads are overwhelmed by being single dads because of all the attention they're getting on things like that. But structures definitely need to be created. They need strong structures where where male figures are established for these children, because they don't have any other. And at the end of the day, because their family needs that help, the only other place to look is the church. So I definitely think that a lot more attention needs to be paid to families that take that form.
So what you're saying is there's more realness that needs to happen. Is it like sometimes that there's just this front that is put up in these programs as if it's all about perfect families, happy families where you have mother, father, maybe the children there? Do they need to get in there and be a bit more real and address more of the real issues that are really in the church? I mean, if you have situations where children are going hungry
This
because
is
of what's
this
happening.
is This is true, Sonia. And what I am saying is that we need more platforms where we're actually even able to speak. All of this starts from discourse. And I'm glad that we have this conversation here, but not
Yeah.
everyone in every church is having this sort of conversation. And so we need to be very realistic about it. And I'm also trying, like I alluded to that one situation. I say I have a single mom, and what would it look like when there is a constant male figure from the church that constantly visits that home, and so people shy away because they don't want the stigma that comes from that. But the reality of it is that that single mom does need the help from the male figures, and perhaps yes, with some assistance with another female accompanying. But the reality of it is that what is needed in that home is a male figure, at least for the example for the children, and also just for someone to know that someone cared, to show up for the children and fill that gap in space.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Neliswa. Neliswa says watching. Neliswa is joining us through YouTube, and we are happy to have you joining us. Kitso has a very interesting question here, Tabo. The question is, what message do we have in Christ for that father or mother who is still alive, but for whatever reason, right or wrong, left their child or children?
Children are not entities to just be left and be picked up at any random or given time. Children are they are an inheritance that comes from God, and we as parents have been given that responsibility. And Kuda rightly referred to the fact that the presence of parents has got effects such as cognitive development in them. I feel that leaving your children is a selfish act from your part, because it does not only affect you. Probably would have done it for right or wrong reasons. It doesn't matter, but the effect that it has, and I keep repeating that, the effect that this has on children cannot be measured because it is great. The children learn a lot of things from us, whether you are rich or poor, um, whether you've got or you don't have. What God has made you to be to those children is either a father or a mother, and children want that first. The first thing that they want to interact with, regardless of your bank balance, regardless, there are children that whose parents have got so much money that we ourselves see it, but the children don't see it. They don't know it. Because children don't necessarily interact with such things. The first thing that children want to have is parents, and parents that are there. Right. So Peter is saying, what message do we have in Christ? In Christ, we say, go back to your children, because Christ has made you has made you to be responsible for those children, and you ought to be there for them. It doesn't really matter what the reason. It doesn't matter how good a reason it is. You need to be there for your children. You are supposed to be responsible for them. They need to learn from you. The lessons that there are many children that grew up with poor parents, but they will tell you that my father taught me to be a man. My father taught me to be a woman. Or rather, my mother taught me to be this. My mother taught me to be that. And that is important. There's nothing better in this world to have lessons which come straight from the mouth of your father or your mother.
Awful indeed. Now, are children who are raised by parents of the same sex able to develop, normally in a well manner as children who are raised by parents of the opposite sex?
Yeah, you ask an interesting question, and I think the best way to answer the question has to be from a religious perspective and also from a scientific perspective. So if you're speaking from a scientific perspective, I want to specifically say this is from work done by non-Adventist psychologists and scientists, and that these are not necessarily my beliefs or my words. I'm relaying what is
Don't
written.
shoot the messenger.
Yes, I have to put a disclaimer. Exactly. They say that there are certain roles that children they develop by witnessing particular roles in a family, and that if, for example, a person displays more feminine roles and then they actually stick to the feminine roles, that the child can, in theory, grow up balanced. However, religiously, we understand that this is not something that is possible because there are just certain feminine traits that cannot be reproduced or replicated by a man who believes that, he is a woman. So scientifically, there have been studies that would have people believe, I think, that it is absolutely possible to come from a same sex home and for you to be balanced. However, biblically, we understand that people are very much different because of their gender, and that there are certain things that no matter how much you try to mimic as a male, you will not be able to fully mimic. So from my perspective, I think I lean more on the religious aspect of it.
All right, we'll leave it on that perspective. But Bonile, why is it that children always have a tendency to search for their biological or absent parent? I mean, you find it a lot that those children who maybe have been raised very well, the single mom has tried so hard to raise them, to take them through school, to give them the best that she can, has sacrificed everything. When they become adults, they go searching for that absent father. Why is that?
I think it still goes back to my answer to Anonymous, that you have to go back at some point in your life, you need to establish the foundation. And one of the most important questions anyone can answer is, who are you? Who am I? And that is always the question. And the truth is, even after they find their biological parent or the missing biological parent, it does not necessarily mean that that question will be answered. But I think that's all done in an effort to answer the question, who am I? Because once you establish your foundation, then you can build up. But if you fail to establish the foundation, you still find yourself at 30, at 20, or even older, still trying to go back to that place to re-establish that. And I think this is the beauty of having both parents, that you can sort of formulate that from the example that they give you, the teaching that you get from them. But then without that, you always feel like there must have been something missing. There's something that I didn't get. Or I probably would get better results out of my life if I could establish this one thing in my life. So I don't think that finding that missing parent will necessarily give you a full answer. It may be the beginning, I don't know. But then I definitely do believe that the question is identity. And that's the question that actually must be addressed there. Who is that person? And that's what they speak at that point.
What about children who are adopted? You're adopted from the point of being a baby. Should the adoptive parents tell you that you're adopted? Should they go searching for that biological mother or father, or should it just be left like that? I mean, after all, you have parents. Isn't that what it's all about at the end of the day?
I, I definitely do believe that everyone has a right to know the reality and the truth about their life. I also do believe that the truth may be the beginning to establishing who you are. It's the beauty of your story anyway. Some stories may be painful, but there's still beauty that can be birthed out of anything. This is what I believe, no matter what the circumstance is. And so I truly, truly do believe that everyone deserves to know the truth about their life, that you should go searching for them. Again, this is something that everyone has to make a decision on. And again, like I say, for me, the most important thing is for you to find out who you are. And I don't know if it works, if everything plays out the same for everyone, but for me, I truly believe that the starting point, especially in your adulthood, if you have to answer this question in your adulthood, is you have to look to the word, find out what the word says about you, and believe what the word actually says about you. Because see, it's not always that people don't know what the word says about them, but the question is, do you actually believe what the word says about you? So I actually believe that your identity helps you even establish and formulate who you think God is. Because for all of us, we may have different expectations of who God is. We may worship the same God because of our identities and our different experiences. Who we think God is totally different. So our identity affects so much about us and how we build up from there.
Yeah. And it's possible that the things that you think are missing, when you find them, you would rather have had them missing. But it's just the unknown.
Yeah, so
You
that
would rather
unfortunately
not
that's
know.
the reason
When you
that
discover who your real daddy is, you'd rather be like, oh, my life was better off.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
absolutely true. Belinda, I am a young lady. I did not grow up with my father, but I find that older men have an interest in me. I gravitate easily towards them, and there is a soothingness that comes from older men than the younger men I have dated. Is it good for me to consider marriage with an older man? I'm assuming Anonymous is not just talking about older, but older. Yeah.
Okay, I was watching a video of a popular psychologist from America, and he was talking about the fact that an absent fathers, you typically see it manifest in three different ways. One of the effects of absent fathers on girls, on daughters specifically, it typically manifests itself in three different ways. He says the first one is promiscuity. You will find that a lot of girls who come from parents where the father was absent may grow up to be promiscuous, or they grow up to dabble with lesbianity. The third, that they tend to gravitate towards older men. And he said, and a lot of times as society, we tend to have a negative outlook towards that because we think, oh, she's very fast, she likes men, she's a lesbian or whatever. And he says, what we don't realize is that that person has got a male energy that has been missing from their life that they tend to want to find in the wrong place. Well, obviously, except with the exception of the lesbian, he says, according to him, like a disclaimer, like what Kuda did, according to him, he says lesbians, in their case, is that sort of bitterness towards men who are not there, But he says typically how absent fatherhood manifests itself is a desire for that male energy. And unfortunately, it manifests itself in you being promiscuous, always wanting men around you, but never getting satisfied. He said you never get satisfied because the energy that you're looking for, you don't get it. You will only get it in your father. But because you don't know that psychologically, you will keep going after men and men and men and men and never getting satisfied. That's why you will stick around. Or you will look for older guys because that older male figure that was supposed to be in your life your whole life as you were growing up was missing. Okay. So I tend to find that, listen, women can periodically be attracted to older men here and there. Personally, I find it creepy. If the guy's like 5 years older than me, it's very creepy. But um, once you find that it is a constant thing, that's when definitely I feel like you need therapy. Okay. if you're constantly attracted to men that are older than you. And I mean, by virtue of bringing it up, Sonia is right. It's possibly not older as in Tawa is older than me. He's like 4 years older. Oh my gosh. It's like older as in, is that your dad outside in the car waiting for you? Type older, you know? So yeah, I think that is one of the examples of, at least according to that video that I was watching, where the guy was saying that the yearning for that male energy that you lost throughout your life growing up, it manifests itself by you looking for it in the wrong men. So either it's multiple men or in older men who at the back of your mind represent an absent father. That's why they say girls have got daddy issues. It should actually be it should not. I don't know why it's a negative term that's used for girls to be daddy issues when the person who had a problem was the father actually in his absence. But that's why they say you've got daddy issues, because you're always going after older men because you didn't have a daddy in your life. So it is not a good thing. I would not suggest that Anonymous marry somebody who's older than her, because she will never be satisfied with that marriage. She's always going to be yearning and seeking, because what she needs is her father.
Because then what you're saying is that you're going to get into this marriage, instead of being a wife, you become a child, and instead of your husband being a husband, you're expecting your husband to be a father.
Yes.
Because
and you tend to have, yes, definitely. And the older men who go for younger women also have their own psychology. Okay, so both of you have got these psychological issues that you're dealing with in this marriage. The other one is looking for somebody that he can lord it over because he's older than her, and the other one is looking for somebody who's going to come and father her here. And sometimes it works out brilliantly, because somebody is looking for the boss, somebody is looking for someone to boss them around, so it works out brilliantly. But in a lot of cases it doesn't, because the thing that you are yearning for, it can never satisfy you, you know. And this man ends up with a child on his hands rather than a wife. And as much as he wanted somebody younger, he wanted a younger wife, not a younger child.
Yo, so is there a cutoff age? Is there a cutoff age when it comes to things? Like, but you want to come in? I say, because I saw that. Is there a cutoff age?
Personally, what I will do is this: we'll just simply refer to the Bible. When we look at the story of Joseph and Mary, there's a growing school of scholars who believe that Mary was somewhere between 13, 14, 15, and that Joseph had children and was somewhere in his 30s. That's the first one. Then next, I direct your attention to Ruth and Boaz. Ruth was somewhere between her mid-20s and early 30s, if I'm not mistaken. And Boaz was in his early 80s, if I'm also not mistaken. So thing is, and I don't know if it's just me, but many seminars that we've been to tell us, wait for your Boaz. But Boaz was like 60 years older than Ruth. So about the cutoff age, look, it all depends on a lot of things. Yeah, personally, and I'm just speaking for me. I'm just gonna speak for me personally. If I'm 36 and I'm looking to settle down, I'm not going to look down upon the 25-year-old. That's all I am saying. I'm not going to look down upon the 25-year-old. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
You may not, well, let me come there. Let me defend Kuda. You know, we still need Kuda on Real Talk. You may not be wrong, because that's what says here, that spiritual prophecy says 10 years. You're in a whole new generation. But Belinda, let me not also close you out.
I was going to say that we also it's very important for us to mention the tradition of the Israelites, the role that it played. Okay, it goes without saying that there were obviously lots of creeps and pervs that use the patriarchal structure of Israel to marry significantly younger children. And I mean, if you look in the Middle East, it's still happening. I mean, I watch these documentaries all the time, and I'll be sobbing my eyes out, where you find men who are like, I was watching one in Afghanistan just now, a few weeks ago. A girl who was 4 was being bought by a man who's 63. So obviously we cannot say, Kuda cannot say, you see that guy, he married somebody he was 63 and she was 4. You know, obviously there is that. We need to take that into consideration, that a lot of stuff that was happening also had to do with the tradition of the Israelites, where obviously I don't know God, but I doubt that God wanted a 14-year-old to marry somebody who's 80, you know, or 60. Okay, that's just my thinking. That person is old and they're creepy, you know, but that's just my thinking. So we need to take that into consideration. But I think like 10 years is a real of like the spirit of prophecy is saying, you know, far be it from me to deny the pen of inspiration, you know. So I think that 10 years is
Amen.
but anything older like 25 and 36 just says creep vibes. I don't know, you know.
We need spiritual
Not too
guidance.
bad.
Older than 10, we need
You
spiritual
know,
guidance.
without digressing, because we are talking about absent parents, but I think that this is, an important drive-by. I think that it's the principles that were important, Isaac and Rebecca, how they met, how they got together because they didn't actually meet, Ruth and Boaz, all of those are just wonderful principles about things that we probably still should follow even today and might lead us to, the 10-year gap. I don't know, but, there's some beautiful things that we've learned that we probably wouldn't just learn from, pick off the street. So I don't think we should totally throw it away, there's really some beautiful, things that we can learn there, I don't know.
I mean, it's real. We would like to address that. But Swanile, also we have a question here from Lovisa, which says when a step parent is not present, can a mother or father figure, such as an aunt, uncle, etc., somehow make up for the absent parent?
I think so. I think that one of the things that you actually I think if you have really good extended family, or you have a close knit family and your extended family is also close to, I find that in spaces like that, the male figures then can rise up to the father figures, and so that there isn't a big gap. I'll look at my own life. I come from a single parented home, but I think the male figures in my family really got together in such a beautiful way. My granddad stepped up in such a very beautiful way that the gap was there, but I can't say I totally regret my childhood. I think that I had a really beautiful childhood, and I think that the male figures in my life, did everything that they could. I can't say that I totally missed out on the whole family experience because they were there, and I think that that's possible. Where the mother figure isn't there, I definitely think that aunts can still play the same role, and so that there's things that a girl child will need to know at a certain stage that no one else can tell them except a female figure, and so definitely they need to be those structures within your family, and if they're there, we need to be grateful for them. Again, I say if it's not there within your family, I am praying that our church will rise up to the, to the, I feel it's an obligation, as heavy as that word sounds, but there is a huge responsibility on the church family as well to rise up to fill in those gaps as well.
Also, another thing, while you're there, Swanile, talking about the church rising up, let's talk about a situation where both parents are present, but one of the parents is not living up to the responsibility, especially financially, is not providing, the resources that the child needs. But they're together, they are married, they are in one home, but this one parent is not interested in buying school uniforms, is not interested in buying clothes and everything. And should the church be able to come in on that situation, or should we just go to the courts?
Okay, so this is twofold. The first thing is that there is a responsibility on both parents to provide. So there's one parent that's probably well able or more able to fulfill the role in terms of providence, but then they don't provide at all. So in that stage, if mom doesn't speak up or if dad doesn't speak up and say this is our situation, the church family will never know. So what's really important for the church is for the church to be inviting enough so that their members are able to speak out when they need help. I I am for I am for maintenance orders for one reason. They establish, clarity. So you don't just choose at a given month that I am not going to assist you this month, or I'm not going to come up and rise up to this level of assistance because I don't feel like it. Maintenance orders have that clarity in that where there is a situation where we are not in agreement on how to care for the children, we know that their needs need to be met on such and such a day on this month, and this is the amount that we are going to be receiving. It gives us also the room to plan for the children. So if I know that I'm going to receive such an amount, then I know that the means of the children are this much and I can plan within that. So it definitely does provide clarity. It also, in children's court, we say that there is no DC. What we are there to establish, in fact, we actually don't call the hearings or trials. We call them inquiries because all we are there to establish is the best interest of the children, are the best interest of the children. And so that's what we really are interested in. What are the needs of the children? How can they be met? What are the circumstances of the children? How can we then, assist the child and help the child develop in the best way and become the best version of themselves in the circumstances that they're in. So that's what children's court is for, to establish the best interest of the children. And even when establishing an amount, it is to establish the best interest of the children. So you find that parents will say that they have their own obligations, but still the court will say, you have all that, you have a car loan to pay, you have a bond to pay, but your first obligation is to your child. Why? Because it's the best interest of the child that we're trying to establish. So you have all these other things, we acknowledge that, but first let's deal with the child first. So going to children's court isn't the worst thing ever. It's not the most ideal, I acknowledge that, but it's not the worst thing ever. And it will assist you in terms of clarity in situations where one parent not be may not be present even though you're living with them, or in a situation where you don't live with them at all.
Thank you for those insights. We are coming to a close of our program. We will be closing shortly. So if you do have any questions, any comments, this is your time because we will be closing soon. We are talking about a generation of absent parents. Thank you, Lulu. Lulu is responding to the earlier discussion on Boaz. And she says, Boaz was a man of virtue. Ellen White has this to say about age as well. She discourages the woman/man being significantly older than the spouse. It also results in enfeebled children. So not only can it affect the marriage, but it can also affect the children as well. Thank you, Denford, also for your
Okay, it seems like our host has currently left us, but then actually I'll even take advantage of this opportunity just to throw out a little something that I actually was thinking, and this just goes back to the whole question that we're on family on family life, how they're actually taking the whole issue of single parent homes and families and all that. And I think the question that we can ask ourselves is, as the departments, do they know who are the single parents in the church? Are they aware of the single parent fathers? Are they aware of the single parent mothers? Are they aware of the children who are in some circumstances? We have within our churches many children or parents who do not know when the next school fees or when next they'll be able to put food on the table. But then the question that arises is, what as a church are we doing? And moving away from financial demands, the next question is AMO. And to be honest, it would seem as though there's an indictment on AMO, because when young men are actually leaving when they're actually getting to an age whereby they need that guidance and the mentorship that comes from the community of men within the church, Amo is almost nowhere to be found or is dead in most churches. For a lot of young men, closest experience within the Adventist church that we have of any male community whatsoever is within Adventist youth. And even then, it's the young leading the young. So the question that comes is, what are we doing as a church? What are we doing as people to actually ensure that if outside of church we don't have a safe haven to properly learn and grow as young men, then we can come to church and we can have the elders and the deacons and the head deacons who are guiding us and trying to show us about being men within the context of Seventh-day Adventism. And I find that, to be completely honest, is sorely lacking in our church. Tabo, Belinda, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're bringing a very important aspect of this conversation, because my thinking has always been, and I always like to take a step back and say, what is the origin really? What is the cause of this? Because we need to reason from cause to effect. And I always find that the reason why we also have a problem with our departments such as AMO and family life, it's because our families themselves are also defective. Our families themselves have problems, or we are failing to manage our own families, right? And I always like to say that, for example, I, as a head of the family, I have been called to lead my family and my children towards heavenly principles. In fact, I have to make sure that I convince this little church that I have here in the home first, before I can go and preach to a bigger church, which is somewhere else in a church building of some sort. And if I fail to convince this little church here, how do I expect to lead a bigger church somewhere else? I fail to lead my family with right and good principles, my children with right and good principles. I actually even fail to realize or identify their needs here at home. How am I going to do that when I become a family life leader in church? How am I going to be able to do that or think in a sort of a bigger picture when I'm now an AMO leader? So it starts right here within a smaller church that I need to make sure that, or I need to excel in my role here first at home, so that when I preach at home, when I preach at the church, this woman here does not walk out and say that is a hypocrite. Also, to say that I need to do that in order for, if I can identify that home, I'll be able to see children that are needy when I am at church, to say, hey, that child looks 7, but the trousers that he's wearing, they are for 5-year-olds. There must be a problem. I can be able to see that immediately. They are for 5-year-olds, and then it means that there is a need. Otherwise, you will not be able to be able to have that distinction. You will not be able to identify such things, and that's the crux of why our departments at church are not really effective, because it starts right back where we started from, or where we come from.
And I think just to add, sorry, Sonia. And I think just to add, one of the things that I found to be sorely lacking in our churches is that church has always been something that we do during the weekend or on Sabbath. Okay, church is hardly ever a family. Okay, you go to churches. I've been to churches where it's a family, and people know each other, and people. But the average Adventist church, I mean, one of the problems that we usually have as Adventists is that you can go to an Adventist church and worship there for 2 weeks and nobody greets you. Okay, nobody even noticed that you were there. Okay, so church is just a thing that we do during weekends. So the lives of people during the week are not our concern. I mean, I was arguing with a friend who was telling me that she does not know what grade her class, her child in her adventurous class is in. And I said, that doesn't make sense. How are you teaching a child who you don't know what grade they're in? So if you don't know what grade they're in, you don't know what family structure they have for sure. If I don't know what my friend does for a living, I don't know what her family, what her marriage looks like. I don't know what parenting challenges she had. So I feel like family life is meant, and family life, a lot of times we see it when we are dealing with problems. And family life typically deals with um, the traditional family life issues. With the nuclear, rather, let me say, nuclear family life issues. Okay, the assumption is that the family is made of four: mom, dad, two kids, boy and girl. So let's deal with that. But hardly do you find programs, for example, that talk about blended families. Okay, so even parents who are from different types of family structures, they are uncomfortable. It's like even single parents, single mothers, they are just an aside. Yeah, that's why most family life programs are for couples. If you've noticed in many churches, if you ask a family life director how many programs,
All right. Thank you, Belinda. Thank you, Belinda and Tabo. We will just get some closing remarks there from Swanile and Kuda, just some quick closing remarks as we prepare to close our show for today. Some wonderful insights indeed that have been brought up. Swanile, over to you. Your quick closing remarks.
Thank you, Tina. We've had a wonderful time, by the way, this afternoon, but we have spoken about the effect of having an absent parent in the family. But I also, want to just, speak up a bit and say, it is possible to have a beautiful ending. It isn't the ideal, but there's definitely a lot of beauty that can be forged out of it. They a Japanese illustration of a broken cup, and how they are able to make beautiful work of art from it. And so I still feel that even in situations that aren't the most ideal, like where one parent isn't present, or where both parents aren't present, there's still some beauty that can be brought out of a life like that. So not all is lost. It definitely isn't God's plan for us, but there is a lot of beauty that can come out of it, and life is livable. Even in a situation like that.
Okay, so Swanita, there's a question here that is just coming from Anonymous. I think I'll direct it at you. We are preparing to close, but let's quickly take this one. The question says, can one parent decide they will save the maintenance so that the child can use it as they please when they grow up instead of the primary caregiver using the money to support the child?
No, that can't happen if. In fact, let me not be too robust about it. The maintenance becomes a real discussion where there is a maintenance order. For as long as the parents haven't gone to court, there is no law forcing you to pay maintenance. But for as long as you have approached the court and the court has made a decision, you call it an order of the court, you cannot, it immediately becomes the law. The parent that is ordered to pay the maintenance must hand over the maintenance installment, if it's on a monthly basis, monthly to the other parent. Where the parent fails to pay maintenance, it is called a debt to the other parent, because then we're saying that the other parent had to cover up for you. So what happens is that if you're told to pay probably $1,000, that meant that the other parent had to now cover up for you and suffer the $1,000. So every month you do not pay, it is called a debt. And that other parent can now approach the court and apply for what we call enforcement of debt. If they are a bit vindictive, maintenance can become a criminal matter. So you need to be wary of that. For as long as there is a maintenance order, the parent that has the obligations to pay can be held liable criminally for not paying maintenance. So it can be that serious. But usually it doesn't make sense to have a parent that's going to pay on a monthly basis behind bars. So you'd rather just go and pay for the outstanding amount and move on with life. But relationships are different, and there is the option of approaching the criminal court because there is a criminal sanction for not paying maintenance.
Wow, 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 wow. No wonder some, when threatened with maintenance, are quick to start paying what they should pay. Thank you so much for that. And if there are arrears on maintenance, for example, if my husband decides not to look after the child and for 5 years I've been covering everything, can I get my back pay for the 5 years? Is there anything like that, arrears?
Yes, and that's the lesser sanction actually when the other parent just approaches maintenance court again and says that they're going to apply for enforcement. We call it enforcement of the maintenance debt. So what it is that for every month that you do not pay, you fall into arrears. And you can imagine after 5 years, if you had to pay $1,000 every month, after 5 years, it's going to be what, about $60,000. So that's some good money, I'd like to think.
Yeah, definitely, definitely it is. Thank you so
So,
much.
so yes, making time. Yeah.
Your, okay, thank you, Swanida. Thank you so much for those insights. Your closing remarks, could that quick closing remarks, and then we can close off the show.
Yes, excellent. I think that I'll just stick to the youth for this one. That with the questions that have come, especially from the young people, the reality that is there is that we have to learn, especially if you come from a single parent home, faster than those who come from two parent homes, although they also will make the same realization that this world is an absolutely terrible place, and that there are some people who are not either going to take responsibility for their actions, or they're going to not behave towards you the way you'd expect them to behave or be the people you need them to be. So you need to be able to be proactive enough to take responsibility for your own existence, because the alternative is to wait around, keep blaming people until you have wasted what could have been the most productive years of your life. So do what you can today to just reduce your suffering. What can I do today to make sure that I don't feel as bad as I did yesterday? And by taking a proactive step every single day, even on the days whereby you wish you don't have to make any of those decisions, you will realize that you will have the opportunity to be a person that can give a testimony about how they never understood how they got through what they got through. But by being proactive, taking responsibility of your life, you quickly come to realize the significant importance of God in your everyday routine. And by incorporating Him slowly and surely in very small doses, the next thing you know, you could even be on Real Talk telling people to read Adventist Home. So the main point is you need to be proactive and take responsibility so that you don't end up having a messed up life with so many people to blame. But at that point, it's pointless because you have a horrible life.
Fantastic. Now, Belinda, you were saying something earlier. Can I give you this opportunity just to round up that point? And then we will truly close.
Okay, I think I was almost done, but my point was simply to say that the Family Life Department tends to, not just the Family Life Department, all departments really, we tend to be neglectful of people's lives outside of the church. Our focus is mostly on the programs that we do. If I do my progressive class on Saturday afternoon at 3 with my eager beavers, what happens to them on Sunday or Monday, it is not my concern. I've done my part and I'm done. So my point was simply to say that as Family Life, or really as anybody in the church, our responsibility is to make sure that we are a real family. We actually know what's happening in the lives of people. Knowledge is power, they say. If we don't know, we can't help. But as a closing remark from my side, I saw a very interesting post online this week. It went viral, where a lady commented and she said her brother is co-parenting with his ex-wife, and he picks up his children every weekend and he drops them off at his other sister's house, and he goes around for the whole weekend. They stay with his sister, and he goes around beating his chest, saying how much of a responsible father he is, and that struck a chord to me, because it said this man genuinely in his mind thinks that he's a present father. And he's that father that we were talking about earlier, that he's present but absent. He thinks simply driving to his ex-wife's home to go and pick up the child makes him to be a present father, so much so that he goes and he boasts. She actually said he writes he updates his WhatsApp status every Friday to boast about how much of a great father he is because he picked up his kids, you know. And the crazy thing was that so many people shared that shared those same sentiments, and they said, "Oh, my dad is like that as well. My brother is like that as well." They simply think because they deposit 10,000 rand into my account, then they're a great parent. And another comment on that post said, the person said, my father was present physically in the home, but he basically ignored me and acted like as if I don't exist. I used to wish that he actually isn't in the home. So that post and that comment made me realize that absent parenthood is toxic regardless of form it manifests as. Whether you are absent physically or you are absent emotionally or financially, being an absent parent at the end of the day is terrible. That's why we call it a generation of. That's why there's even an absent parent syndrome. It is a syndrome. It has become so commonplace that it has actually been designated as a syndrome. You know. So as a church, it's something that I feel we must pray about. We must rebuke, you know, in Jesus' name, and we must put processes and systems in place to make sure that we provide the support in the church to overcome this syndrome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I guess you speak for the entire family, and we see some
Yes.
beautiful family life happening there. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, we are having some special guests here on Real Talk. It seems that a lot of the comments coming in here are that the church can do more. Yes, Real Talk is a platform where we can discuss real issues, but these are implemented by the church itself. So we hope that Family Life is indeed watching this program and taking note of what can be done practically in the churches. Let me just take a few comments here. This is why Family Life is for families. It's not a couples association, which can be set up as a subgroup of Family Life. The church is made up of many family type units, and thus all these need to be addressed and taken care of equally. Yes, indeed, we can improve the quality of our families from what is happening even within the church. There is a role that they can play. Another comment here says, yes, church programs are led and tick. I can put on my report and done and dusted. So that comment is basically saying, let's have real programs that address real issues, not tick box programs for the sake of simply submitting a report. We would like to appreciate and thank everybody that has joined us in on today's discussion. It has been a fantastic way to end our last program of 2021. But what do our viewers say? Lily Moyo here says, thanks so much, take-home lessons from this topic. Thank you, panelists. Londiwe says, highly enlightening program. Thank you, family. Wame here says, insightful discussion. Thank you, Londiwe, for sharing the link. Yes, you listened to the call to share the link, and we are helping each other out there. Chico says, beautiful and insightful program. Thank you. Sister Paspamira says, thank you. I have learned a lot. Precious here says, thank you. Real Talk team. I had a blessed season of insightful learning from your real topics. God keep and bless you throughout the festive season.
Okay, I think that it's possible that we can just pray and bring it to a close. So, Tabo, if possible, if you could just pray for us.
Let's pray again. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you again for allowing us, Lord, to have such an important discussion in our lives. In fact, it affects us, it affects many families. Not only that, it affects churches and communities. It affects children directly, so Heavenly Father. And there are children that find themselves in precarious situations because of absent fathers, absent mothers, and they don't know what the future holds for them. Father, we pray for them, even though we may not know their name, but we pray that you may be a guide, and you may intervene in their lives, in their situation. Those that have commented here with their names, some anonymously, Father, we pray for them also, and we ask that may your Spirit look over them and that you may resolve their problems, perhaps now, perhaps later. But Father, we commend your Spirit unto their lives so that, Lord, they may know that there is a God. There's a young person who has also commented and spoke about how he does not even believe in God. We should not even talk about God. How does God allow people to suffer like this? But I pray for that young person, and I pray that may your Spirit specifically and specially attend to him and attend to his needs. The stepmother issue is a problem in their lives, and I ask that, Heavenly Father, you do attend to them so that they know that God is faithful and is faithful even in our own lives. He intervenes in things that that really matters in our lives. And I pray for all the other people that have got their problems, in as far as children, in as far as spouses, in as far as their wives and their husbands are concerned. Heavenly Father, these are the foundations of what communities and churches are made of. And I pray, Heavenly Father, not because I'm worthy, but because you are worthy, that you may uplift them from where the positions that they are at, and that you may become a God still in their lives. I pray for the panelists, everyone of us that has been here, Spanile and Kuda, that has been here, and Sonia. And I pray that, Lord, you may also grant them special blessings upon their lives and upon whatever they do, wherever they go, in the things that they do. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Soja is still not yet back. Who would have thought that I would be closing off Real Talk for the end of the year? So I'll enjoy this. Oh, here she is. Thank God.
Yeah.
Sonia. Oh, okay, I think, yeah. So just grateful to have had this opportunity with Real Talk. And I'm sure I speak for the rest of the panelists when I say that we have had an amazing time. So as the years come to a close for us, I hope that by the time that we come back, we are fresh with a lot more information, a lot more lessons to share, and a lot more to learn from one another. So thank you, Sonia. Thank you to the team. Thank you, Lutle, and everyone behind the scenes. Thank you, Uncle Sam, for having us. And on that note, Uncle Sam, I think you can take us away.
Thank you so much, and we apologize for that technical difficulty on my end, but I'm sure we have successfully managed to close off this program. We would just like to appreciate all the guests that we've had joining us throughout this season. We've had guests from as far as America and as close as right here in Windhoek. We've also had some interesting topic discussions. Thank you, everybody, for watching Real Talk. Without you, we wouldn't even have Real Talk. May we be blessed in our families, in our relationships, and may the Lord continue to guide each and every one of us. May He keep us safe throughout this festive season, and may He continue to watch over us and bless us. Once again, Kuda, thank you so much for being our Real Talk guest, not only today, but throughout the seasons.
Okay, exactly.
Holy words, long preserved for a walk in this world. They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope, give us strength, help us cope in this world wherever we roam. Ancient words will guide us home. Ancient words, ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient